Welcome back into another edition of the Daily Fix. I am Steven Serda once again, filling in for my guy, Ron Hughley. Ron will be back very soon as we continue to monitor the status of Rashee Rice and hopefully get some details on him early next week, according to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll update you on that on today's episode, as well as talk about some expectations that we have for the Chiefs moving forward, as we know for certain that Rashee Rice is not going to be available for at least the next 4 weeks after they place him on IR on Thursday. And then I want to give a shout out to my guy, Kirk Cousins, before we get out of here today after his incredible performance on Thursday Night Football last night. But as we do each and every Monday through Friday, I want to remind you, if you haven't tuned into the Daily Fix before, we do this every day at noon. A couple of quick topics, get you in and out. Don't take up too much of your time. So please head over to our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe there. Head over to Apple, Spotify. Check out the latest that we have for you on Foolish Club Media. Latest episode of Show and BK is available right now. Myself and Brandon Kiley broke down this Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and Saints. So we got everything you need to know ahead of that contest and where we think the Chiefs match up with the New Orleans Saints headed into this NFC matchup on Monday Night Football. But as I already mentioned, got a few updates on Rashee Rice, I guess, as we're all still sitting around waiting, hoping to get the best news possible on the Chiefs star wide receiver. According to Chiefs head coach Andy Reid, they're waiting for the swelling to go down in Rice's knee in hopes that they can run some more tests, get a clearer image of his knee, and find out what the actual damage is to that area in hopes that it's not a season-ending ACL injury or something like that. Arrowhead Pride also added that they need to do a scope early next week in Dallas, Texas, so they can check his PCL, MCL, and LCL on Rice's knee. So I think at this point, we've all been sitting around clamoring, hoping that we get some answers on this thing, because I think we all saw the potential of Rashee Rice in this offense and how important he was over the first 3 games of the season. And now all of a sudden you're down Hollywood Brown, Isaiah Pacheco, and Rashee Rice. This thing is worrisome moving forward for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think right now, obviously, the most optimistic approach to this situation is that Rashee Rice is not going to be out for the entire season. Now, we're hopeful that we'll get news on that early next week, and hopefully after a Chiefs Monday Night Football win against the Saints to improve to 5-0 on the season. But at this point, I think anything that isn't season ending is obviously positive for the Chiefs. But we should probably move forward assuming that he's just not going to be available. And the way that I like to approach these things is just by assuming that he's not going to be available the rest of the way for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I hope that that's how Andy Reid and his staff are approaching this thing, because the offense hasn't exactly been what we were expecting through the first month of the season. We thought coming into this year, it was finally going to be this high-flying, explosive Patrick Mahomes-led offense again that was going to put up 35 points a week at will, and it was going to look easy for the first time in a few years here. And that's obviously not the case now. I've talked about how they have to lean into the defense and just decide that this is who they are moving forward. But it's also on Chiefs head coach Andy Reid, who I haven't been particularly impressed with Reid this season. His play calling, I feel like, I don't know if it's last season. I don't know if it's the fact that they can count on the defense in the way that they do. It just feels like that they haven't really lived up to it yet. And I think that starts with head coach Andy Reid. I know that Patrick Mahomes hasn't played his best football to start the season either. And my next point that I want to get into here in a second has to do with the offensive line. But there's still a lot of things the Chiefs have to figure out here. And I think even more so than Patrick Mahomes, it starts with head coach Andy Reid. We've seen Andy Reid have success doing this in the past and adapting and finding ways to maximize the talent that he has on the roster. And then I think we've seen Andy Reid go through these lulls where the talent's so overwhelming for the Kansas City Chiefs that he kind of falls into these little funks where it seems like they struggle to get things done. And it seems like they're adjusting and trying to find answers. And there's all kinds of growing pains and penalties and things while they work through all of that stuff. And Andy Reid's got to get this figured out. They got to be able to maximize the players that they have right now, because that's what the best offensive minds in the NFL do. And Andy Reid is certainly capable of that. He's more than proven that over his entire career in the NFL. And when you have Patrick Mahomes, even if he's not playing his best football and you expect him to step up moving forward, I still think the Chiefs can get this thing figured out on offense. I'm not totally convinced that the loss of Rashee Rice means that this is the 2023 offense all over again. I still think they can get this thing figured out, and I still think they can find some answers. We just have to live with the fact that this offense is not going to be what we thought it was coming into the season. And I think and part of that, and where some of the blame lies in that as well, is the Chiefs offensive line. Like, I think coming into the year, we thought interior of that offensive line is absolutely elite. Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney. Jawan Taylor's going to give you good reps. He's going to give you bad reps, but for the most part, he is, an average at best right tackle in the NFL. And then Kingsley was supposed to be this high upside rookie draft pick who was a day one starter who you were hoping could get things figured out and looked like he was going to be an anchor for that offensive line moving forward. Doesn't really happen. Wanya Morris comes in, and I think Wanya Morris has been serviceable for the most part, but I think we need to talk about the expectations of this offensive line because the Chiefs have dumped a ton of resources into that group, and it's supposed to be a focal point of your team. And I think part of the reason that we've seen Patrick Mahomes struggle to start the year, and it's not just protection issues. It's not like he's constantly under duress when you think about a player like Caleb Williams for the Chicago Bears and how bad their offensive line is and how he's just getting decimated every single week. The Chiefs haven't been like that. Like, they're still an above average offensive line overall. I just feel like we should expect more from them. Like, this offensive line should look like an elite offensive line, and I don't think that they've lived up to that potential just yet. Even with Wanya Morris or Kingsley or whatever the answers they have at left tackle, I think the interior of the offensive line deserves some criticism because those guys are supposed to be the truly elite part of this offensive line. That's supposed to be the group that you can rely on and that each and every week they are going to do their jobs and they are going to protect Patrick Mahomes. Trey Smith has been inconsistent this year, and I think that's always been kind of an issue with him where he shows this potential to be an elite guard, and I imagine in a contract year, he's going to wind up getting a massive payday this offseason. I don't know if it's going to be from the Kansas City Chiefs after they pay Creed Humphrey. Joe Thuney missed most of training camp as he worked his way back from an injury, so maybe that has something to do with it, and maybe there's still trying to find that chemistry and mesh together as an overall unit because they didn't get the reps in training camp, and then you have the early season left tackle change. Jawan Taylor had 3 false starts last week. He's got 4 on the year. He already leads the team. Like, they have to get all of those things figured out. And for all of the question marks that they have on offense and all the answers that they're trying to find right now, I think that it could really start with the offensive line. If they can get this thing figured out and get more out of that group, it will make everything easier. And I think it will make Patrick Mahomes play better. No more bailing from clean pockets because he's cautious of pressure that he's already been feeling in games, which we've seen him do several times over the last few weeks. And Patrick Mahomes at the worst moments in his career has done that a lot. He has a tendency to drift in the pocket and bail when he doesn't need to. And we need to see him settle down. We need to see him play better. We need to see him play like the MVP caliber player that we all know that he absolutely is. But everything that they're trying to work through on the offensive side of the ball right now, I think they would find a lot of answers if they could just get more out of this offensive line. If they could lean on the offensive line and say, okay, we need you guys up front to go win your matchups week after week. It'll make the rushing attack better. It'll make Patrick Mahomes more comfortable. And I think that it'll make everything else open up. So the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely got to get more out of this offensive line moving forward because I think they've been a little bit of a letdown despite a 4-0 start to the season. Last thing before we get out of here, I just wanted to shout out Kirk Cousins, man. What an unbelievable Thursday night performance from Kirk Cousins. I wasn't sure about the Atlanta Falcons coming into the season. Obviously, they had high expectations, new coaching staff, all of these high-end draft capital players, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Like, this offense, for all the criticism that Arthur Smith got over the last several years, and I think he absolutely deserved it, the expectations for this offense were through the roof. In the first couple of weeks of the season, I was like, I don't know. I don't see it. Kirk Cousins can't move around. It seems like they're scared to, really give him a chance. They're not running any play action or anything like that. They're not giving him like layup throws. And it just seemed like it was a little bit of a mess. But now we're seeing the Atlanta Falcons really settle into this offense. and Kirk Cousins just goes absolutely nuclear on Thursday Night Football, throwing for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns and an overtime win over the Bucs. Like, just an incredibly impressive performance. I know Aaron Rodgers gets a lot more of the headlines coming back from the Achilles injury, but Kirk Cousins is 36 years old. In last night's game, he did more than anything Aaron Rodgers has shown so far this season. Like, I don't know if the Falcons are a legitimate contending team, but right now they're sitting at 3-2, and Kirk Cousins just put up one of the best games of his career. And it's a career that's loaded with pretty impressive performances, despite the fact that we kind of discredit a lot of the things that Kirk Cousins has done. Like, he has been one of the more impressive quarterbacks in the NFL over the last several years. And he did tons of crazy things in Minnesota. They had that one season where it was I think 11 or 12 wins were all by like a single possession. And he continues to do that, even though, we talk about him falling short in the postseason and primetime games and whatever. But I just wanted to end today's show shouting out Kirk Cousins, because that performance was absolutely impressive as hell on Thursday night. And I hope it continues, because it's a fun story in the NFL, and Kirk Cousins looked really impressive. And I'm excited for those Atlanta Falcons skill position players to finally have a functional quarterback and somebody who can make plays under center after all of those years of just being absolutely putrid at the position. So that's all I got for you on today's episode of the Daily Fix. Again, please make sure you head over to our YouTube page and subscribe there. Make sure you check out latest episode of Show and BK on the podcast page. Head over to Apple, Spotify. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Do everything you can to help us as we continue to build this thing all throughout the NFL season. Ron the Show Hughley will be back soon. But until then, you'll get me on these daily fixes every Monday through Friday. And then we will be back on Monday evening following the Kansas City Chiefs game against the New Orleans Saints with the latest episode of the Foolish Club postgame show. Myself and Rocky Magana will break down everything that you guys need to know from that and what will hopefully be another Kansas City Chiefs win. We'll talk to you guys then.